Well, I'm going to go try and pick up the tractor today. I actually tried picking it up yesterday, and I didn't bring the camera with me, which is too bad because you would have saw a funny mishap. I brought my planks that I have here with me, and you can see this one snapped. What happened was I had the planks on the back edge of the trailer. I'll show you the trailer in a bit. And there was a metal lip on the trailer that I had one of the planks resting on. And what happened was I started to drive up, and I got the front wheels almost all the way up onto the trailer. The metal lip let go because it was rusted, and that thin metal lip allowed the plank to suddenly pop down at an odd angle, and the force of the front end dropping rapidly was more than sufficient to completely snap this board. So I got to go back with a little more power. For one thing, I'm not going to put the plank on that lip anymore because, for one thing, there's not much of the lip left, but also obviously that wasn't strong enough to support the weight. I'm also going to try and double up the planks and maybe shorten the planks. The shorter planks will be a steeper approach to get up onto the trailer, but that will also minimize the span that the plank has to cover, and that will hopefully help keep the planks from snapping. Well, here's the trailer. Custom built Trailers Inc. out of Farmingdale, New York. Got a serial number, but it doesn't have any information as to how much weight it can handle. But it's a pretty darn sturdy trailer. It's heavy. You could definitely feel it bouncing on the hitch when I was driving it empty yesterday. So, got a pintle hook hitch. So I get that all hooked up. Safety chains, I wrapped those around one time and hooked them. It's got this kind of a trailer light hookup on it, which I don't even know if the lights on this thing work, but I don't have an adapter like that anyways, so I'll be driving it with no lights. I'm only going around the corner, so otherwise I wouldn't use this trailer. It's got electric trailer brakes, but they weren't working anyways. This is my neighbor's trailer. He's letting me borrow it. This is his old farm trailer. He had ramps, nice steel ramps that hooked into these channels right here. And the ramps are sitting on the trailer out in front of his barn, and one night somebody came by, some scrap metal thieves came by, and they grabbed the ramps and took off with them, and they probably brought it to the scrapyard and got just a couple of bucks a piece for them, but that's what goes on around here these days. Scumbags. Anyways, this is the lip I was talking about. See, on this side the lip was pretty badly rusted, and I had that ramp hooked on there, and it ripped it right off, so don't want to do that again. So now I'll make sure I have the ramp actually resting on the actual trailer itself. Alright, goes nothing. I got some big 8x8 blocks of wood underneath the midpoint of the ramp, and I've doubled up on the top there, so hopefully that'll work. I'll double up on that one. Well, doesn't seem like it's very high, but when you're sitting up there on top of the tractor trying to get it up, it's quite the pucker factor when you wonder whether or not that plank's going to snap underneath you. But I got it on. A couple of things I made note of while I was trying to drive it on. First, I'm leaking hydraulic fluid like a sieve over here. That's coming out of the bottom of the steering gear box. And if I understand the way this works correctly, there shouldn't be hydraulic fluid in the steering gear part of the system here. The only fluid should be going in and out of this cylinder. So this cylinder may be leaking into the steering gear box. That's my theory at this point without taking it apart. This leak right here is the oil leak. I still get an oil leak here at the pressure gauge. So I did try tightening that, but I think I'm going to have to replace that line. It's probably going to cut in the line. And then the other thing that's kind of sad is, as I was trying to steer it, it was quite obvious to me that one wheel would go in one direction while the other wheel would just stay in the other direction. Or, make a long story short, the wheels aren't turning together at all. I mean, just barely. There's a mile of play between them, which indicates to me that there's a definite problem between the rack gears. The gear on this side and the gear on that side aren't meshing properly. So it's definitely not just a power steering issue, as I suspected. It's also definitely a gear issue. You could tell this wheel right here, if you look at it, it almost looks like it's tractor's not on there perfectly straight, but this would be almost the wheel facing forward. And you can take a look at this one here, and you can see it's turned quite a bit. It's turned out that way. So yeah, all right, let's get strapping this sucker down. One bit of good news is I do have a large part of the weight of the tractor right over the two axles, so hopefully those dry rotted tires will hold. Wow, I just grabbed this front wheel and was able to turn it. Just by grabbing both sides of the wheel and giving it a wiggle, I was able to turn it. So this whole arm here has got like a mile of play where it shouldn't be. All right, time to go. Got the tractor strapped in there best I can. Ideally, I wish I had snap chains to get this all tightened down, but I don't. So I've got several ratchet straps on each side in the front. I've got a huge ratchet strap on the back where I've wrapped that around the axle on one side, ran it over under the belly, down on the other side, so it's hooked on his side, wrapped around, goes down, wraps around the frame on the trailer, comes back up, wraps around the axle again, and then cinches down the front. And then I got one little, this is the pull type, these aren't very good for much, but I just stuck it on there. And got blocks underneath the rear wheels. I've got the tractor in gear, in first gear, so that it's not going to want to roll easily on the trailer if it tries to roll. So gonna go real slow and easy because the trailer doesn't have lights, the tires are dry rotted, and I've also got one major hill to contend with on the way home. Well, I successfully got the tractor back to the house with no mishaps. Now it's time to get this steering gear out of here, start doing some work on it, see if we can't correct some issues. Now, the IT manual actually talks about taking the steering gear out with the whole dashboard and steering wheel as an assembly. I mean, that's all fine and dandy, but being that I already have the fuel tank out, I think rather than do that, I'm going to remove this dash assembly. There's 4 bolts right here to take this pedestal off. Take this off first, and then just take the steering gear out. I might even take the bolster off. This part right here in the valve, I might take that off separately and then take the steering gear out later. But I got to get the steering wheel off, and it's got some nasty looking welds here because it's broken several times. There's no nut retaining it, so it might be just a matter of pulling it off. So I'm going to get me some PB penetrant and put some on. Well, that was easy. Looks like there's no threads left on this thing for the nut that used to go on there, and the I don't know, shaft doesn't look so great either. Well, worry about that later. Now work on getting this dashboard assembly. Well, looks like that's going to be a piece of cake as far as getting that off. Got to disconnect the oil pressure line, which is leaking anyways. A couple of wires. Tack drive cable should be able to unscrew right from the back of the tack. Let's see this one here. That one might have to, let's see. Oh, that one I could just unhook the sensor bulb and leave that behind with that. Well, the throttle's the only thing I'm not sure of. If this shaft goes through that right there and it's not captive, then I should be able to disconnect the linkage on that side right there, and that should slide out of that hole right there and let me take the whole thing away after I unbolt those 4 bolts. Well, that's the theory. Alright, so here's where I'm disconnecting the throttle linkage by removing this little bolt. And there's a washer sandwiched in there too. And the washer is on the lower side of this this bracket right here, so, or lever I should say. Oh, well, this section right here, the steering gear's in the way. I can't get the nut to come out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen up this bracket and tilt this up a little bit. So I'm going to take these 4 bolts and loosen them up. Whew, I tell you what, those 4 bolts are tight. I'm going to need my socket and a breaker bar, maybe an extension too. So I did bring the tractor back to the house, but I've got it parked off to the side field here, so I'm not right near the shop. So what I'm going to do is shop, should say basement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on some of the other stuff here. I'll do the wiring, and I'll undo that sending unit line.